News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, hour number 3 of the show. And asking you if you would marry your spouse today. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. Would you marry your spouse today? Why or why not? And I won't be criticizing you here. Just be honest. A decent amount said they would not. Here's one person says, I wouldn't marry him again. No, he's not the same person I married. Person I married took care of himself, didn't need to be told what to do. He's my partner. Now he needs to be told what to do. I feel like I'm his mother. If I knew what I know now, absolutely not. We would have been married. We have been married for 5 years and we're in our 30s. Wow, already in 5 years. Dang. Kind of sound like you need to go through what I went through with my wife and come out better ahead of it. Here's another one that says, no, we can't do it anymore. We vote for different people. We attend different churches. We can't even agree on things like vaccinations. Imagine living with somebody you can't even talk things about like the election, pandemics, economy, because it leads to profound disagreements. Now, hold on. Now that I would like to know, do you have a good marriage, what you consider a good marriage with your spouse, even though you guys are totally diametrically opposed politically? Is that possible? We've all heard of Mary Madeline and George Carville. Right, the Raging Cajun, and she managed Bush's campaign. He managed Clinton's campaign, the Bush versus Clinton campaign, or not versus, but in that same time frame, back in the good old days, if you will. So I think they're still married. So is it possible to have that diametrically opposed politically, but still have a good, happy marriage? I think it is possible. I don't want to have to go through. I wouldn't want to have to do that. But on the same token, I'm sure it can be done if what matters is taken care of, which is that you love your spouse. I mean, think of it this way. If you love your in-laws or your members of your nuclear family who are diametrically opposed to you politically and can have a relationship, then why couldn't you do that with your spouse? Let's go to Ronnie in Dallas, who's called in at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Ronnie, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, how are you?
I love your show.
Thank you.
And yes, I would marry her 100 times over.
Yeah, why?
Rock.
Why is that?
She's just a beautiful person, inside and out. I've got 2 kids, 8 grandkids, 8 great-grandkids, and they all live on our property, and she's our rock. Everybody's rock. She keeps everybody together going.
Nobody gets sick of each other? Or nobody says, I don't want to live with my in-laws?
Nope. We've lived on the same property since 2006.
You can imagine that that could be a problem, right? Like you hear a couple having their parents or one of their parents moves near them. We had one that did that, and the mother-in-law moved near them, and it was not good, and she was always butting in on them, showing up at the house unannounced. That can be bad. Not in your case, but in many cases it can be, right?
Yep.
Those boundaries can be...
sister and husband here 2 years ago and built them a house, and it's just wonderful. She's our rock. She's an amazing woman.
Well, if you want to build me a house, too, I'd consider living in it.
And we just celebrated 40 years as of Saturday. So.
Okay. Well, you think about that house. If you want to build me one, maybe I'll consider living there, too.
Come on. we live out in the country, and we're all to agree, baby.
All right. I like that. I'm considering it. Thanks, Ronnie. Appreciate you. Let's see here. We're going to go to... Which one we go next? David or Sue? David? Okay. David in Waco, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, David.
Hey, how you doing tonight?
Good, sir. How are you?
Fine. I'm kind of like Chris. I've been married 53 years. In October will make 54. So, and he said one thing. He called her his best friend. I'm a retired sergeant major, Army and Marine Corps. And
thank you for your service.
I loved it. A little over 40 years. But I used to counsel soldiers that were getting married, and I tell them don't get married to have a husband or a wife. If you get married, you better marry a buddy and a best friend, because that's the only way your marriage is going to last in the military. So
I would say that it's probably pretty similar with law enforcement. Although the military is stressful in a different way, where you're gone, you're deployed for 6 months, a year. 3 months, depending on what your deployment status is and such, and your service is. It's particularly hard. And it's actually harder on the spouses that are staying at home than the ones going out and serving, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My wife says I'm as much a veteran as you are, you know.
Correct.
'Cause you said deploying. Well, I've been in 4 wars on 3 continents, and I've always come home. I've always had a buddy there waiting.
And that matters. Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate you. Let's go to Sue in Weatherford. You're on 820 AM now, 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Sue.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
How are you?
I would say yes. Well, I'm doing good for an old fat lady is what I always say.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband says, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's true. Okay. Very good. Here we go.
But he and the old goat, I tell you, he and I have been married 58 years. There's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and it just infuriates me to hear these whiny people. Well, at 5 years, I can't stand him any longer.
It's sad, isn't it?
Oh, give me a break.
It's sad, isn't it?
It really is. It's just everything's throwaway nowadays. So,
well, you know, I wonder if the shoe was on the other foot and their spouse was trying to throw them away after 5 years, how they would feel about it.
Well, they don't think about things like that. We only think about ourselves.
Something tells me a lot of the ones that want to throw away the other spouse might be the ones that are a bigger pain in the rump than the ones they're complaining about are.
You're probably right.
Take that from me. I'm a lot worse of a project than I thought I was back in the day. I appreciate your call, Sue.
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, buddy in Graham, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, this is a great topic. I've been married for 48 years and went through it. It's a job. Marriage is a job. But I was asking church one time if there was any one thing in my life I would change. And I said nothing because I might miss her.
That's interesting.
And, you know, we went through the ups and downs, but we were always in love.
You know, when we talk about stories, my wife and I, we've been married now for 24 years, but when we talk about stories out of that first year or two out of college and the struggles and the difficulties, and, you know, I was all, you know, boo-hoo, poor me, and she was the one that bucked up and was the one saying, dude, relax, you're not a victim, chill out, you'll be okay. And so right. She was a lot of times the strong one early on. You know, and it's interesting because now I'm supposed to be the stronger one.
I understand. Sometimes we have to switch roles.
Yes, we do sometimes. Buddy, I appreciate your call, man. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Next, a kids' gender clinic whistleblower tells all. Students, or I should say children, coming back and begging about their body parts that have been removed. What were they begging to have happen? That's what's even more ghastly and sad. That's coming up next on the Chris Rock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. And if you're missing any highlights of your favorite WBAP shows, hear them anytime on our free app, WBAP app. Download it today. This is sheer horror. A woman who is a whistleblower from a children's gender clinic called Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital. So this is as official as it gets, St. Louis Children's Hospital. The Washington University Transgender Center. She says she is queer, and she says she is married to a transgender person. So she's as LGBTQ plus stuff as you can get, right? And yet she did a tell-all with Dr. Phil, saying that she saw regretful patients asked to have their removed body parts restored after operations. A woman named Jamie Reed, who worked there, told all to Dr. Phil. She did an expose last year calling her the gender clinics for kids morally and medically appalling. She said a number of things that changed my mind about this. Dr. Phil said, what changed your mind about these transgender treatments for youth? A number of things. We started to see patients who were experiencing very significant medical harms being rushed to the emergency room with lacerations requiring stitches. We had patients contact us who were begging to have body parts put back on within months of having surgeries. Can you imagine a 10-year-old or 15-year-old or 14-year-old girl coming back saying, please put my breasts back on? Where do you think they are 3 months later? They're not, I mean, they're probably in a, they were probably burned, right? I mean, what do you do with body parts? You don't save them. This is Dr. Mengele. You know who Dr. Mengele was for the Nazis? Yeah, the angel of death. This is Dr. Mengele. We have people in our streets tonight being arrested all over these campuses, blocking Jews, terrorizing, attacking cops. And then we have our youth, children, begging to have body parts that were butchered off to be put back on. I mean, what are we seeing here? We're seeing the rise of open Jew hatred. We're seeing the rise of people being experimented on and butchered and coming back and begging to have their parts put back on. What do you tell a boy who's had his Johnson cut off? What do you tell a girl who's had her breasts cut off? We started to see patients who were experiencing very significant medical harms being rushed to the emergency room, laceration and stitches. Patients were contacting us begging to have body parts put back on within months of having surgeries. The thing that kept happening is every time I would raise concerns and ask about the protocols and ask about the guidelines, this is just how the industry works. If a child says they're trans, there's no question. And we just say, yep, you're trans. What would you like? She was responsible for intake and oversight during her time at the hospital for 4 years. Most young people walk through that door, received hormone prescriptions that can have life-altering consequences like sterility. You're telling me that a 12 or 13-year-old who can't decide which pajamas to wear can come in and say, I've decided I want to transition with no more than a couple hours or 2 visits, not even a couple of hours, 2 visits. They say, okay, start taking this, start doing this, which alters their biochemistry in a way that you cannot come back from. That's what Dr. Phil asks, and she said, yes, correct. Children's identifying as trans become 10 times more common. Children saying that they're trans is 10 times more common now than they are overwhelmingly young teenage women that wish to become men. So it's 10 times more common for people to say, I'm trans, and they're overwhelmingly young teenage women who want to become men. How could we let this happen to our girls? This is an evil thing that's happening. Do you feel this is child abuse? And are you glad Texas outlawed this in our state? 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. Do you feel this is child abuse? And are you glad Texas outlawed this in our state? Remember when we outlawed it, we had those gender clinic people and doctors leaving, saying, I'm going to California. What did I say? I said, good, don't let the door hit you in the butt. Do you want this in our state? Aren't you glad it's been banned? I sure am glad. And how is this not child abuse? She says the girls become very attuned to the trends in their environment. She would see the same class come in clusters, all requesting procedures at the same time, the same class in a school, all saying we want the same procedure at the same time. She says they would come in, they would almost have the exact same storyline too. They learned what to say from a video to explain, oh, no, I really have felt this way from early childhood, but a lot of their parents couldn't remember anything like that. Doesn't matter, does it? Doesn't matter what parents say anymore. You're not the parent. The government is. And the radical leftists are. There were very few written protocols or guidelines, she said. One of the providers even said, we're flying the plane as we build it. Doctors are acting like they're God when it comes to medically transitioning children. And that's exactly how I feel. I saw a young person, she says, who was begging to have their breasts put back on after surgery. We were encouraged not to make a big deal out of it and definitely not to tell other families. I couldn't continue to be silent, she said, about all the detransitioners. Wow. All right. Do you feel this is child abuse? And are you glad Texas outlawed this in our state? 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. I definitely feel it's child abuse, allowing a minor child, to say, I feel like this. I feel like that. And then within a few hours of talking and meeting, you're literally getting your body parts removed. Or you're taking hormones that are irrevocable and what it can do to you, or make you sterilize yourself. And can you believe there's states out there in our country, like California and stuff, where they will go after you if you're the parent. You won't let your child get the gender reassignment. These kids don't know what's good for them. I know. You know why? I remember an exact time when I was like 16 years old, and I still was a late bloomer. I was a late bloomer until I was like 17 or 18. It was the biggest nightmare you could imagine. Okay? Can you imagine being in the football team and being like the only one that's still hasn't gone through puberty yet? Oh my gosh, was it embarrassing. So I remember being in the car specifically. I remember what road we were on and what intersection we were driving towards, and I was begging my mom to give me some hormones. Now, I didn't know if they did that. All I knew is they had to be some hormones they could do to kick my hormones in. So I was begging her for that. And she was a nurse at the time. She's like been retired for a long time, but she was a nurse for 20, 30 years. And she knew what she was talking about in that. And she's like, no, I'm not going to. She didn't even entertain it. She's like, no, we're not doing that. And it was hard. And I didn't like it. I was angry. But eventually, I went through puberty, and it doesn't mean anything 2 or 3 or 4 years later, does it? It means nothing, And to imagine if my mom would have given in to me because she wanted to do what I wanted to do with my body, you know what I mean? I could have taken these hormones, and God knows what they could have done to me. And I didn't care. I would have taken it. I would have taken anything. So I could have gone to the hospital. Instead of me saying I want hormones to kick in my puberty, I could have said I want hormones to make me a girl. If my mom would have listened to me either way, it would not have made me who I am today. And what was fleeting, it was what I was demanding to have done to me was fleeting. It means nothing 2, 3, 4 years later, but it could have really done some damage to my body or myself. What the heck did I know at 16 or 15, whenever I was, somewhere 15, 16, 17, begging for that? I didn't know what I was talking about. Can you imagine? I would have gone in there and they would have given me something. What if it wasn't even the right stuff, but I was asking for it? But I knew, I was confident. This is what they're doing today. Something that my mom had the willingness and the fortitude to say, no, I'm not doing that for you. You're going to be fine. I didn't like it. I hated it. Coming up next, we have we have quite the story here about this. Chinese government-linked hackers have burrowed into our U.S. critical infrastructure, and they're waiting for just the right moment to deal a devastating blow. You're going to hear how they already have us, apparently. And as you probably have also heard, not only are they poised to strike our nation's electric grid, but even some Texas towns have already had their water supply overflowed by being hacked by Russia. So we're going to talk about how much of a threat you consider China to be to the U.S., to us. And then we're going to also talk about TikTok. And if you trust TikTok to be on your phone, or instead if you'd rather have them banned, as it's still being pushed right now. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. That's next on The Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. I don't know if you caught this. A Russia-linked hacking group. This is about 4 or 5 days ago. Russian-linked hacking group suspected of carrying out cyber attack on Texas water facility. And this was the Muleshoe. Have you heard about this small town in the Panhandle called Muleshoe, Texas? Leave it to small town Texas to come up with these weird names, right? Muleshoe, one word. Wow. If I would live in Muleshoe, I might want to think about changing the name, right? Just something a little bit more appealing. Right? Just it's a little suggestion over there. But the Russian hackers were able to break into their system, vulnerable to cybersecurity, and actually they were flooding the supply kept coming. The water supply kept coming to overfill and flood the tank. That caused a tank in Muleshoe, Texas, to overflow. And it was from hacking. That was Russia. But I want you to know that we also have reports of Chinese hackers already have deeply embedded. This was from this past week, about 4 days ago, in Nashville at the Vanderbilt Summit on Modern Conflict and Emerging Threats. Christopher Wray, our FBI director, said the Chinese government-linked hackers have burrowed into our U.S. critical infrastructure and are waiting for just the right moment to deal a devastating blow. They're in our infrastructure, and they're going to deal a devastating blow when the right moment hits. It's over. Like, they're already in our infrastructure. China is developing the ability to, quote, physically wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing, Wray said. Its plan is to land blows against civilian infrastructure to try to induce panic. Okay, so, for example, if they want to go in and attack Taiwan, that's the perfect time to do it. So they could set that up and cause chaos here by taking out our power systems, our grids, and then finish off the job in Taiwan while we're panicking and are unable to follow things on social media or on our laptops or anything like that. I've talked about this with you. Can you imagine? Do you remember what it was like when we had people in DFW that were panicking, thinking that we'd have a run on gas? Remember that? It was like 3-4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, where everybody was panicking about a gas shortage, so they went out and bought gas. And by going out and buying gas and rushing out to, they actually caused a gas shortage. Do you remember that? It was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe give or take a year or so here or there. And a man was punched at a Costco in an argument over getting gas. What do you think will happen when the power goes out? Don't you think it'll be a little worse than people causing a gas panic for no reason because they just freak out and go buy gas, you know? That was a weekend of fake gas shortages because people went and panicked. If they didn't panic, they would have just bought what they needed to as they were told, and nothing would have happened. So can you imagine if our power's out, then the kind of chaos that people will do over that? If you can't get gas because the gas pumps don't work, I don't know if they work without electricity. And your electric system going out, so therefore you can't perhaps heat or cool your house. You can't operate your fridge. Can't use your computer, your laptops. Your smartphones eventually go out. Wow. So that's called Volt Typhoon. We've talked about it a little bit, but this is the first time when he said it's deeply embedded and they're just waiting for the chance to unleash it on us. At a time of their choosing, and it's already there. Too bad. We also see that China is building a new outpost on our U.S. doorstep, 220 miles from the U.S. Virgin Islands, from the shore of our U.S. Virgin Islands, Antigua. Have you heard of Antigua, of course? Antigua is a vacation island. Now it's becoming a Chinese-run special economic zone. They have their own customs, immigration formalities, a shipping port, dedicated airline, and will be able to issue passports, Chinese passports, right there in Antigua, 220 miles. It's the island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, and in other Caribbean countries, the strategic region known as America's third border. And now they're there, and they're growing in it. I mean, and all the while, it feels like we have a president that's appeasing them. Probably because they have compromising materials on him, from him and Hunter taking billions of dollars or millions of dollars from them. And then look at this. This just came in. And China is continuing to subsidize fentanyl ingredients bound for U.S. Of all places, NPR actually did a news story that wasn't woke. And here it is. The investigators for the U.S. House Committee released a report detailing what they describe as new evidence that the Chinese government is continuing to directly subsidize the manufacturing and export of illicit fentanyl. Specifically, They found companies making fentanyl precursors and analogs could apply for state rebates in China and other financial benefits after exporting it. The Chinese officials encouraged production of these precursor chemicals for fentanyl, giving monetary grants and awards to companies openly trafficking illicit fentanyl materials. So when Joe says we're getting China to stop these precursor chemicals, they're not. China's giving bonuses and supporting these companies making fentanyl. They're giving them bonuses and incentivizations to create it and ship it out. And then you have on top of that, I want to add one more layer to this, TikTok from the Chinese Communist Party. We had a nice lady one night who called in and said that she gets her news from TikTok. She doesn't think there's a problem with TikTok. She doesn't mind it. I said, do you not understand the Chinese Communist Party has that data? Oh, I don't care. They don't. And she's like, I don't believe that. They don't have that. And I said, when they were journalists covering TikTok and how the Chinese Communist Party still had control of its data and was telling it what to do, the reporters that were reporting on that in D.C., TikTok was surveilling them. TikTok spied on them with the TikTok app, trying to figure out who was telling on them, who was doing a story on them, and what they were finding out. A foreign government spying through its app on your phone to see if you're the journalist who's getting a story about TikTok. Well, now comes this. Former TikTok employees reportedly say the app has worked closely with its parent company, Chinese technology giant ByteDance, despite claiming otherwise. TikTok told U.S. lawmakers in January that we had severed its connections, most of them with ByteDance in China. However, 11 former TikTok employees, 4 of whom were employed as recently as last year, told Fortune a different story, Fortune magazine. In one example, a man named Evan Turner worked as a senior data scientist at TikTok in 2022 and said he first reported to a ByteDance executive in Beijing, but at some point was told to start reporting to a Seattle-based executive. The only problem was his American TikTok executive didn't exist, only on paper. After being told he'd report to a Seattle-based executive, the HR representative followed up with him in a separate conversation, informed him he would actually still be working with the Chinese ByteDance executive directly for China. He never met any Seattle-based executive, continued his weekly check-ins with China, executives in China. They're still running everything. Twice a month, they sent him spreadsheets from China containing data for hundreds of thousands of U.S. users to ByteDance employees in China, sending hundreds of thousands of information on hundreds of thousands of users to China. There it goes. I literally worked on a project that gave U.S. data to China, he said. They were completely complicit in that. There were Americans that were working in upper management that were completely complicit in this. That's amazing, isn't it? The move was made in an effort to appease lawmakers. They were saying, we're going to create this wall. But as Breitbart News reported, the U.S. Senate is reviewing legislation that would ban TikTok if it doesn't sell within 6 months. So 11 recent and former employees all told Fortune the social media service works closely with China-based parent despite the claims of independence. It's still working with them. So we have the Chinese Communist parties working with TikTok. Oh, and I forgot to tell you one more thing about this. The Chinese embassy. I'm going to tell you about how they had a meeting on the Hill. Wait till you hear about this meeting, the TikTok meeting people on the Hill. Who was it that TikTok sent to meet people on the Hill? Was it Chinese nationals or was it Americans? You're going to love this. That's coming up next. And my question for you is, how much of a threat do you consider China to be to the United States? And do you trust TikTok to be on your phone, or do you want it banned? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. I consider China to be our number one threat to America. It is our enemy. It is the number one threat to America. And number two, I do not want TikTok on any of our phones, and I want it banned. Ban them, force them to sell to the United States, only to a company, nothing to do with ByteDance. It's over or goodbye. Fine with me. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, I'm going to give you that last piece on these employees who said they worked closely with the Chinese company. And then also coming up, I love this. A U.S. tourist is horrified to receive a $143,000 bill from their what do you call it? Their cell phone provider. $143,000 bill after a short overseas trip. Is it a house or is it a phone bill? You figure it out. I don't know. That's next. 800-288-WBAP. Chris Crock Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. So, 11 separate employees that worked as recently as last year on TikTok say they work closely with the Chinese-based parent despite claims of independence. In fact, they say, quote, independence from China was largely cosmetic. A few of the former workers would only speak to Fortune magazine, which is the one that broke this story, on the condition of anonymity for fear of retaliation by TikTok, including the company seizing their restricted stock they were given while still employees. Ooh. One woman who worked in business development at TikTok and ByteDance in the U.S. Said in her sales conversations selling a program called Lark to customers, corporate customers. Her sales conversation, prospective customers would ask her where Lark stored their data users that posted on the platform. Trying to find out the answer, she spent significant time getting the runaround. Never received a firm answer from TikTok or ByteDance management. You could never really get straight answers that could be solid enough to bring back to your client to basically let them know this is a trustworthy platform. Their American data is safe. They are not transparent to the point where I had to lose a deal because I couldn't answer basic security questions people are entitled to. So, very, very interesting. And it goes on and on in this lengthy piece about that China is still getting the data and everyone. You know, the one guy that's pretty stark here is that one guy I mentioned. He said that basically I was exporting. He said he was exporting data. I literally worked on a project that gave U.S. data to China. They were completely complicit in that. There were Americans that were working in upper management that were completely complicit in this, giving American data, U.S. data to China. So, no, your data is not safe with them. Hey, by the way, get WBAP today now on FM 93.3 and make that a preset. All right, so this one is a must talk about one. U.S. tourist is horrified to receive a $143,000 bill from T-Mobile after a short overseas trip. Here's how you can avoid similar charges, the Daily Mail says. Well, I can tell you this. My son's in Japan right now. And one reason why I chose to stick with who we've got right now is their international thing is this. If you call an international call, if your son uses the line for, local calls from Japan, it will be $10 a day and it will not exceed $100 a month. So if your son uses it for 6 days, it'll be $60 extra for the month, as many times as you want each day. If he uses it for 10 days, it's $100. If he uses it for 15 days, it can't go over $100. So I'm like, well, that's pricey, but at least it's not over $100. It won't be $143,000. Now we need some help down here. Florida man. Oh, a Florida man. That says it all. Florida man revealed how he and his wife were stung with a $143,000 bill after a 3-week vacation to Europe. They live in Florida, and they returned in town in which he enjoyed about the magical moments and friends. He grew up, they returned to the town where he grew up, enjoyed magical moments with family and friends. But it appeared to come at a cost. They returned home to the shocking cell phone coverage from their carrier, T-Mobile, $143,442.74. I said, excuse me, $143,000? Are you guys crazy? Roaming charges are incurred when you connect to a foreign network. Wow. Outside of your native network's boundaries. Always check with your own carrier to what roaming rates are. Yeah, I called before I went to Mexico, and we're going to look at using my phone. We talked to, before he went, about a month before Japan. We got all the information laid out. Obvious way to avoid roaming fees to rely on only Wi-Fi when you travel. But, one time you messed that up, right? Wouldn't you be paranoid the one time you could get complacent after using Wi-Fi every day and you forget one day? Oh! You would really need to just turn off your cellular function, wouldn't you? That way you'd have to specifically turn it back on. Roaming can be disabled entirely via smartphone settings. Oh, there you go. You can still text and call and text with data off. Over the 3-week trip, he and his wife used 9.5 gigabytes of data, charged roaming fees, averaged more than $6,000 a day. You could rent a yacht for that, probably. All right. The average North American uses around 11.1 gigabytes a day, data a month. He used 9.5, and he was charged $6,000. Woo! So he immediately called T-Mobile, waited for a representative to review the charges. To his dismay, they validated them. Sir, you are the winner. You win a $143,000 bill. You are the winner. Aren't you excited? What do you mean it's a good bill? Well, this is what you owe. Oh, holy gosh. He has been a T-Mobile customer for 30 years. He visited the store to share his travel plan ahead of his trip, as he always does. They said, you're covered. Whatever that meant, you're covered. Oh, I would have said how much, wouldn't you? Holy gosh. Daily Mail asked T-Mobile, but they didn't receive a response. T-Mobile on its website says to avoid bill shock, check with your bill shock. Bill shock. It's like getting the genital shock cuffs put on you. Where your privates. Check your service provider before you travel to see what options are available. While roaming charges are in many cases a thing of the past, certain places still apply. You have to call and you have to find out. I don't have too much sympathy for them. You have to find out what the rules are in that country. Sometimes it's better to just get a SIM card if you can get a SIM card for your car, or to get, what do you get? You get a cheap phone there or something like that? I don't know, but just figure it out. Don't play unless you absolutely know 110%. Get it in print.